How's it going, guys? Well, as you can see in front of me, I've got a whole bunch of parts, half an AUG, a scale, a trigger weight gauge, LMG barrel, just a ton of parts. This video is going to go over the install of the new Arid aluminum trigger and aluminum safety. We're going to talk about some of the original parts, what the first generation of the Arid parts, the actual 3D printed pieces were. We're going to give some weight comparisons and what you can expect to gain from your trigger pull. So, let's get into it. Alright guys, well as you know, this is my regular standard AUG takes waffle mags. In this particular one, now for almost 10 months or so, we have been running the Arid upgraded trigger components and magazine release, the safety, the whole gambit, everything that Arid makes, besides their case deflector that's actually on a different stock of mine, or actually a completely different AUG also. But what we're going to get into is we're going to kind of talk about what they made in improvements from the original factory trigger. We're going to give some weights, we're going to give some pull weights. In the last video, everybody was kind of asking, like, why didn't I go into big detail, really talk about what this video is going to go over. That initial first video was the first 300 to 500 rounds I was putting on the aluminum trigger, just doing a field test. You guys know that I have worked with Arid on helping them design this and test it over the last year, and I didn't want that to be a biased issue of, you know, saying it's a great part. I actually wanted to test it to see if I had any issues with it. I ran it in multiple AUGs, actually ran it in this LMG. And a couple things. I did have one slight issue that I had to work on, and it's actually on my very first set of test aluminum ones. So these are not the final production, which the timing of this video, the production ones are actually in, but I did have to make a slight modification to this just for fit issue, which I'll go over just in case maybe one of you guys have that issue also. But let's get into it. Let's talk about it. I'll take this trigger out here in just a second. But your original trigger shoe that's inside your AUG, it's just a piece of hollow plastic. It's got a regular tension screw and a lock nut here in the back. That your trigger linkage actually goes up inside. It sits here and it only had one retention point, which basically, as you can see on this one, it's kind of squished it down, makes tension here, and that's what your trigger rides in. So it actually makes a bend into the trigger shoe, which rides inside the stock, which if this is over tensioned, it will create a tension issue and a heavy trigger pull up here. If it's not tight enough, you're going to get trigger slippage on the actual rods. If you've ever taken out this rod or if you've paid attention to it, there's actual groove cuts cut into these for grip in here to kind of limit that. So there's kind of a blend of making sure you don't go too tight, not too loose for this rod to actually engage with the trigger shoe. What Arid came up with on their trigger, in the front of it they actually installed a ball bearing, they stiffened up the whole inside channel, and then just redesigned the actual tactile feel and the side grip angle on their trigger, which I'll take this one out to actually show you. But as you can see in this one, or grab your AUG, take a look, it's just really smooth, it's really just basic. So that's what they improved for the trigger. They also did an improved safety. If you guys have ever really got in behind your gun or ever put on a pair of shooting gloves and notice that your trigger finger right at your knuckle always gets ate up, you start to get a callus or it'll cut through your gloves, it's because of this safety. It's just literally a brick. It is squared everything off. What Arid did was, this is the aluminum one, but I have the polymer one. They rounded all the corners and tucked it back up inside the gun. So now when it goes in, this one's actually set up, when it's out, you don't get that bite. You're not getting a sharp edge that digs into your finger. And when you go to engage it, you can just roll up. You just don't get a dig anymore. And it sits really flush into the stock. So that was nice that they took that improvement. A lot of guys over the years took a file and just went to town on the old plastic one and kind of tried to reshape them. And occasionally they got stuck inside the stock. But that was the improvement to their safety. It's really that simple on the safety. They just rounded out the corners, gave it some better geometry. So there's that. One other thing that they did is in the magazine release. That is your original magazine release. That is your Arid. You can see it's got a much larger paddle, very, very similar to a Corvos. And granted, these are not made in aluminum yet. They're working on that. That's phase 2, I believe. But their prototype magazine release works really, really similar. I actually have a Corvos in here right now. This was the one that was in this gun. The only reason I took this out is I just like the contour texture of the Corvus better. This literally works in the same way that the Corvus does. Where the Corvus has that butterfly effect inside on the magazine, on the paddle, this one is just a big flat button, but it works very, very well. Let's see, I think I actually did show you to give you context. Here is one stock that actually has theirs in it. And it gives good retention, and it definitely gets your thumb up there. And that's the Corvus. So it kind of give you an idea of what they look like. They're not massively different, but just enough. Okay, let's kind of get into the nit and gritty before I take this one totally apart, because everybody keeps asking about trigger weight, what's the pull tension. A factory AUG with nothing done to it. So you go buy one from your local gun shop or order it from the factory and you get it. You're going to have a trigger pull somewhere strictly on weight, not on feel or anything else. Feel is totally mental, and too many people want to say it's a single stage or two-stage trigger. Let's not go there. Let's just go strictly on the weight. Actual weight should vary between 10 pounds and 12 pounds. That's just how it is. There is a 2-pound difference depending on if you have a standard or a NATO version. It also depends on who put the springs in. You know, maybe the spring tension was a little bit greater from one facility to the other. Just the parts are going to vary. So a factory AUG is going to be between 10 and 12 pounds. This particular one that's set up here in front of me, it's got the Arid trigger. I have tuned this rifle. If you guys are unfamiliar on how to tune your trigger, please check out the videos that are here on the channel. I actually explain on how to get all your linkages, everything tuned to maximize trigger pull. So with that said, this fire control group that's here in the back, the trigger pack, does have a Ratworks 2020 sear. I'll touch on that in a minute, but just so you guys know, in this gun it does have that Ratworks sear, which will be coming out here shortly. Finish my long-term testing on it. So with this one ready to go, we're going to put a gauge on it. We'll see what it pulls. I've got a brand new lineman gauge. This is a mechanical gauge, so it's just off of spring tension. I've tested it. It is precise. I've actually been using it on my precision bolt gun. Let's see. That said 8 pounds, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 ounces. So I'm going to run it. We'll run it here off to the side. I'm going to reset it. Sorry guys, I actually had my hand in there. £8. We're going to go for 3. We'll take the average of 3. So first one was 8.10 ounces. Second one was 8 pounds on the dot. And 8 pounds on the dot. So that's what we're getting. We're getting 8 pounds. So that's an improvement on average. Let's just go the high side that it's 8.5 pounds. We're actually getting an 8-pound pull, I think, because I pulled on this side with the magazine. It's a little different, but at worst it's 8.5. From low 8 to 8.5 for the trigger pull. That's instantly a 2-pound improvement. Now, is that strictly off the trigger, or is that off the Ratworks? I've played with this with both, and when I switch this into the other stock, I can show you some different improvements. But that's what I've been doing average with this system. I haven't had any differences having the factory sear in here. So at least in my gun. So let's go ahead and take this apart. And we'll throw in the aluminum and we'll test it all in this gun. I don't know. Where we were left off was I was pulling this one apart. So I've got the trigger linkage out. We've got all the components pulled loose. So we're going to go ahead and pop out the trigger. And we'll go ahead and push out the safety. So we'll back up. We're going to quickly tune it and make the adjustments and get in here. We're going to test and pull with it. And like I was stating earlier, this trigger pack does have a 2020 Ratworks Steyr in it. That's the only thing that's done to this trigger pack. A couple things you're going to notice that are different from your factory one. If you guys were happen to be running one of the original prototype Arid polymer triggers, when you get your aluminum one, you're going to notice that there, from your factory, there's 2 extra screws. So the first one is up here in the nose. So this screw in the nose is it's going to give some better retention on the trigger linkage. So instead of it just gripping right here, it's now going to grip right here at the tongue and in the middle. The second thing you're going to notice on this trigger is that there is a 3rd set screw here in the rear. One of 2 things you can do. You'll need to remove this set screw before doing the complete install because it has to be set. What this here is, it prevents over travel on the safety. So when you set this up, if you want this actual safety just to work, when the crossbar safety goes in, the actual back of the trigger will hit here. When it's disengaged and it's on fire, you can actually limit the amount of travel, so you can't pull completely through, basically death grip your trigger. It will actually bump, with this set screw being down, it will actually bump the safety and stop you from over traveling on the trigger. So that's what that's for. You don't have to run that. If you want to take it out, if you don't need it in there, or if you have a different application, you don't need one. So doing the actual install, all these parts install just like your factory components do if you've ever taken them out. Biggest thing is make sure that you put the little springs back in for your safety and get them lined up. And let's see. Safety goes in, and the safeties are still ambidextrous. So for you lefties, you can set it up how you want. There it is. And the actual trigger itself. Like I said, you will need to take out that rear set screw. And we're going to take out the center screw. When you set this up, make sure that you loosen your very first set screw. You just need to pull it up about 2 threads out the top. One issue you may have, this trigger just doesn't drop straight in. You do have to kind of tilt it, so it needs to go in tail first. And you kind of will set the tail. And make sure that your safety is open into the fire position, makes it a lot easier. We'll drop in the tail and then drop in the nose. Pull the trigger forward, engage your safety, and make sure that you actually have lockup, that your trigger doesn't move. Now, one thing I had stated earlier that I did have an issue with is this rear tail on the back was just a hair too long for my stock and where my safety's at. I don't think it's something that Arid needs to change design in. It's more in the stock, and because you're dealing with a new production part. They're not undersized, there might be a little oversized. So it's a variant. We can put the blame 50-50. One on Steyr, and we can do 50% on Arid. With that being said, the stocks are handmade. So these are cut, they're a little bit different. The parts all matching up. If you guys have an issue that your safety does not fully engage, what I found in mine is that the safety was only catching on the corner and I could actually pull through it. It just wasn't engaging all the way. So double check that your safety is engaging, and the easiest way for that to do is when you install this, and this is aluminum, so it just takes a small hand file if you need to just trim this off. I think I took it out 1.2 thousandths was all it needed. So we're talking half the thickness of a normal fingernail. So, like I said, make sure that your safety is basically in fire. Insert your trigger tail end, and it should drop in. When you pull this forward, just keep your thumb up here, take out your index finger, pull the trigger forward, set the safety. You should get positive lockup, and then basically just keep your thumb up here so there's tension, or put your hand across and pull the trigger. It should not go, it shouldn't jump. So all of a sudden it goes and it pulls back, or it catches, kind of hangs, and then it jumps. That means your safety's not engaging all the way, that you kind of need to trim it just a little bit. The other thing to do is to look inside the stock, right where that third set screw is at, and you can actually see the safety bar move in front of the trigger shoe. So that's how you can tell for positive lockup. If you wish to install the over travel, this is the time to do it. Just go ahead and get it's real small, guys. I can't get a good camera angle. Basically just start a couple threads on it, and helps if you actually look at it and not try to do it while you're on camera. They do supply you with a Allen key. There we go. You just want to start the process so you don't forget that it's there. And basically when you're going to tune that and you're going to set it, once we're all done, that'll be the very last screw that you mess with. So here we go. Get the rod in. And go through. You guys know the easiest way on tuning these is to insert the trigger pack. Come on. There we go. Guys, I'm not going to totally explain on how to tune or how to set your trigger up, because I've done it in about 5 other videos. So if you're wondering exactly what I'm doing, please go check out my tune videos. I'm just going to do this to install these parts very quickly. When you're setting your final torques, hand tight is good, just a little, just maybe a hair over snug. If you happen to have a set of the fix-it sticks or an actual inch-pound meter, you need to do between 10 and 11 inch-pounds of torque on these screws for the trigger themselves, so you don't deflect the actual trigger linkage. And so far, and I would totally recommend, from previous experience, you don't need any type of Loctite. If you put Loctite in here, basically due to the way the parts are, where the stock's at, it will become a royal pain if you ever want to take it back apart. But these parts so far have not ever needed Loctiting. So that's in. There's the trigger. Now the final one, and I said for the over travel, which becomes kind of a pain, and we'll probably jump real quick, it's setting this final set screw. And just because of the location and this hump, the screw does not, you don't like to get the Allen in there very easily. There we go. Now that Allen set screw basically needs to ride flush, so it'll clear the actual stock. And what that's going to do is going to prevent the over travel. It's going to bump your safety. So it's there. Let's go ahead and throw a receiver. Back in here. So it works. And let's see what our weight is now. Alright, before, remember we were pulling right at 8 pounds. So we'll make that adjustment. Now all we've done to this stock, as you guys have seen here in the video, is just install the aluminum trigger. £8. Here for you guys. I keep inverting it, sorry. Alright, let's do 3 more. Let's see what we set at. £8. £8. It did it every time. So between the polymer and the aluminum trigger, there's no actual weight difference, at least on this particular AUG. I will tell you, and I told you in the beginning of the video, let's not totally go off of feel, but when you stick this aluminum trigger in here, your tactile response is going to be greatly improved. And we can show the take-up. Now, guys, I quickly tuned this, as you guys saw. You can see where this is at. You can see right here at the front, we literally are moving a 1/16 of an inch. And with that overstop travel, I'm just going to pull it back. That's it. It stops. It's just right there, and the trigger stops on the safety, so you're not totally pulling back all the way. So there's the trigger installed. Now I do have, let me kind of get this up here for you guys, maybe you can see it a little bit better. Now I do happen to have a special AUG, and I will transfer these parts into it, and I'll show you something on that particular one, making improvements. So there's the parts. I'm trying to think of anything else to tell you guys on the install. I mean, the install is really set forward. It's simple. The only additional is that Allen key, and like I said, we can take it out. It does not make, actually it's that overstop. It makes no difference on the trigger. Before I move on to the next one and pull this back out. I'm going to show you guys. It doesn't make any difference on the actual trigger. £8. £8. I don't think I need to do it a third time for you guys. Alright, so what we're going to show now is basically what we call dead, like you're pulling it all the way through the trigger or just death gripping it. So here we go. And then it's there. That's it. It's not really much of a big difference. You can feel it slightly, that you can kind of pull a little bit more. Makes it a little bit harder, hopefully you guys can hear on the camera, but it makes it a little bit harder of a click, which is engaging the trigger pack. When that set screws in there, you don't get that effect. So there's not just a huge difference. that's it. Okay, let's pull this. Alright guys, give me just a few minutes, we're going to switch this over and I'm going to show you that other AUG that I have. We're going to set this into that stock and we'll run it that way. Alright, be back in just a minute. Alright, now that I have the other stock put back together, we're going to go ahead and install the parts into this stock, which has a few different features because it's an LMG system setup and different parts I'm working on for the trigger pack. So we've already installed the safety, pushed in just like the other one, and then with a new trigger, we're just going to drop in from the tail, forward. There we go. Drop in this rod. Now I will say on this particular trigger pack, it does have a few different features. It is testing out a null trigger. Basically it is a little piece of stainless steel that goes over on the hammer, so it's not polymer actually striking, it's a thin piece of like 1/32 stainless that's on there. I'm doing a test with it. After that, there are some spring changes that I'm working on for a trigger modification for lightening the trigger, and we'll see exactly how much lighter that this trigger system is compared to your stock standard. So that's pinned in. And again guys, I'm just quickly setting up, not fully tuning this, which the nice thing on the Arid parts, once you've done this a few times and you've learned how to do the actual trigger tuning, you basically always set them up that way, so that's why it looks so much faster that I'm doing it this way. It's just because this is probably now the 250 or 300th time I've actually done it. And as you guys can tell, it's right there. So, go ahead and throw this one in. Give it a pull. Now this one has a little bit more travel to it due to the difference of the springs. They're not so tight. But we'll go ahead and we'll see what it's pulling at now. Like I stated, this now has the Arid aluminum trigger, the aluminum safety, and it has my modifications on the trigger pack, which are lightened springs, which is going to improve the trigger. Let's see where it's at. Helps when you reset it. That pulls at 5 pounds, 10 ounces. Just like all the other ones, we'll go ahead and we'll set it up for 3 pulls. £5 pounds, 2 ounces. Oh, not messing with it so you guys can see it. That one went to 6 pounds, so something's off. 1 second. We'll give it one more. £5 pounds, 10 ounces. So that's the fourth one on there. Just because we got an odd reading, I want to see where it's at. Make sure I didn't do it. So we've had a little over 6 pounds, as low as 5.10. There you go, 5.10. So that's with that trigger and that system set up. And just to kind of show you guys how easy what 5 pound or just under 6 pounds feels like. This one's got a little bit more jump to it when it actually engages, as you can tell. 1 second. Get it set up here. There's the trigger. You see it's got a little bit more travel to it because of those springs. Okay, so there's the trigger, there's all the specs, what you guys can expect on the Arid stuff. So when you stick just the Arid trigger in, you're going to go from that 10 to 12 pound ratio into the 8 pound. If you get the 2020 Ratworks Steyr and you install that with the system, you get a little bit better. That's what's in this stock. So let's talk about real quick a couple combining factors and things I think everybody kind of needs to know about. One thing I know Arid has on their website. So move this out the way. Arid talks about their trigger and running the 2020 Ratworks Steyr. So something that I've been a big advocate for, and it's not so much to bash a company, but I want to make sure that everybody is aware of what you're doing. The way that the 2020 Steyr works is the actual Steyr catch for your hammer. It is at a different angle, and we're just going to use it at a reference bed. Your hammer is going to come back, and when it goes to cock, there's a lip edge here. Your factory Steyr grabs, let's say, 1 inch up. And that's what you're fighting against. When you push back on the Steyr, then the hammer can come up. On the 2020 Ratworks Steyr, it grabs at like 1/4 of an inch. So it grabs right at the tip. That's the issue when people talk about drop safety, or that you could have a drop failure. It's because that Steyr is only grabbing, let's say, that first 1/4 inch. It's actually a lot less than that. There's probably some people that are a lot smarter that can give the millimeters or the fractions to it. So I'm just using general numbers to emphasize what that Steyr is doing. So when it grabs at that, just that very lip edge, if you push real hard, or you take this rifle and you try to grenade it in the ground because you get a stuck chamber, you're trying to pull back on the charge handle like an M4. So basically you're trying to take this thing and grenade it in the ground because you've got a stuck round or to strip one, something that's malfunctioned, and you revert it back to like an AR or an M16 platform. In doing that, you can jump that Steyr, and you can jump over the basically your fall protection, or letting it provide the drop safety. So I tell people all the time, if you're strictly looking to get a trigger, the feel improvement, let's just not say the weight at the moment. If you're trying to make the trigger system feel lighter to your hand, a proper tuning on this trigger, it takes about 10 minutes, 15 probably the first time, to adjust the linkage inside to get that to feel a lot better. The 2020 Steyr combined with the Arid trigger system, Arid on their website even talks about that they don't recommend to do that. They don't want someone to have an incident. They don't want you to have a compounding issue of making the gun drop, not drop safe. So, and that's been my big push for a number of years on the 2020 Steyrs, that if you don't take this gun and grenade it into the ground, be mindful. The other issue that I have with the 2020 Steyr is I've been getting a lot more phone calls. You guys are probably going to read online. So if it's on the AUG forums, the Steyr Club, on Reddit, people are having to cut into the trigger pack to get the Steyr to fit just right, or they have to modify the Steyr or modify the trigger pack to get it to fit. If you have to do that, just stop right away. the part's not right. If yes, it is an upgrade, you're changing something. If you have to do that, just stop. I mean, the trigger pack is designed in such a way, it works very simple. There shouldn't be anything inside it that you need to cut out or, cut loose or move, maybe on their sear if you need to open up for the drop safety to fit correctly. But I'm sorry, you should get better quality parts. I would not run a part like that. I do have one inside this stock. It was sent to me to demo by a subscriber to get my opinion on it. And it'll be towards his own video. Yes, I have one. Yes, I'm using it. It will be coming out of my gun. It will not be any longer be used inside one of my rifles, period. I've actually had a rash of people call recently about their guns having a select fire issue or running away, just having a linkage issue inside, and it's due to the 2020 SEER. Not grabbing the hammer, things being off, installed improperly. It's just a problem. It's something that you can eliminate. If you don't do it, yes, let's just say you'll have half a pound heavier in a trigger. It's worth it knowing that the gun's safe to use. So that's on that particular one. On this stock, and what I'm messing with trigger, the trigger pack inside, you guys are probably also going to read that Steyr has some lightning springs, some hammer springs that are different. That is not the case of what I'm messing with. You guys have to realize that there's different laws in each country, and just using the United States and Austria, the Austrians they've got some new rules, or their laws have changed, and they're getting to do some of the normal upgrades or things that we already have and have had here in the U.S. For those springs. So this particular trigger pack that's inside this rifle that I'm playing with, there are no spring changes. There's no 2020 SEER. The only thing additional that is an aftermarket company is that null trigger or no trigger. It's a little piece of metal. I'll put a picture up of exactly what it is so you guys can see it. After that, there's some adjustments and some things I'm doing here in-house to get this trigger pulled down into the sub 6 pounds. I'm trying to get it to about 5.5. So that's what I'm doing with this one. Now I will put out there, I have seen some reports, and guys, granted, if you can do it, I'd be interested in talking to you, even if it's privately or underneath an NDA. I saw someone try telling me that they got their AUG down to 3.5 pounds. I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it's highly, highly unlikely that you're getting an AUG to pull consistently at 3.5 pounds. I've played with these springs. I know what's in here. You're doing something, and I don't know if it'd be unsafe, or if you're taking so much weight out of the hammer springs that you're not going to have a truly reliable gun. I have seen some people that have taken hammer spring weights and built their own or got new springs. I can maybe see that happening, but if you're trying to take a factory trigger pack system and lighten it to that weight, I just don't see that being realistic. That 4.5 to 5 pounds, depending on how worn springs are or what you kind of played with, and if you know what I'm talking about, there's a couple different companies and other things that have made stuff, and they're not reliable. So that's what I'm working on. I would say with my reputation in this channel, and you guys know my background with the Steyr community and with these rifles, I have not personally used one and have seen one that runs all the time that is below 5 pounds. So just to give you guys some idea on setting it up. Now these triggers from Arid, the tuning capability that you can now do, or that I've shown people to do, you can set these triggers up, and I would have told you that mine was 3 pounds. It is. It's pulling at just what, 5.12, 5.10, so just under 6 pounds, just a little over 6 pounds is what this one's doing. And I've been working on this trigger pack now for about six to 8 months, getting it set to where I want and testing with it. So far on this one, running the new LMG system. I've probably done 2,000 rounds to 3,000 rounds of ammo, and I'm still testing it. So if once I get the test phase done with it, I already have a company that's in mind that wants to talk about it, and we'll kind of wrap it up into its own video when it comes out. So I just kind of want to talk about trigger modification, playing with the springs, what to expect when you start combining a bunch of parts together. So hope you guys found the video informing. If there's any questions, you guys need any help, as always, just reach out through the channel, email me. It's TnSteyr@gmail.com. You can go over to Instagram, Facebook, you can go through Reddit, any of the online platforms. Just shoot me a DM. I'll be more than happy to help you guys out if you have any install questions or torque specs. So there you guys go. Have fun shooting, and hopefully when you guys get to see this one out again, we'll have some suppressors in-house. They should be here quite soon. Some actual permanent ones that will be here on the channel. Alright guys, have a good one.